Welcome to the Inner Light Companion, a space to personalize your spiritual journey with the 12 sacred intimacies. I'm Tamara Ridge, your companion and guide. Each episode of this podcast explores a facet of connection with the divine, yourself, others, and the world, offering clear markers to recognize, gentle practices to try, and stories that help you grow what's strong and tend to what needs to grow. Move at your pace and use the name for the holy that fits your heart. This isn't therapy or advice. It's a meeting of souls, a place to listen deeply, ask real questions, and remember the wisdom already within you. I invite you now to take a breath. Let's begin. So before I get into this episode, I want to explain something to you. This series of Reclaiming Your Freedoms was supposed to be a 7-part series, but as I have been digging deeper and really looking at all of the areas where freedoms get taken from controlling religions, I've decided to expand this mini-series. So now it's about 17 parts. I believe it's going to be coming out every Tuesday and Friday through the last Friday of the year. This is November of 2025. So we're going to be going through December 26th. And then on December 30th, we'll begin our 4-week series on communication intimacy. And then after that 4-week series, we'll be back to our normal cadence where we'll be doing teachings of the masters featuring what I've learned from Yogananda once a month. And then after that, we'll start on with the next sacred intimacy. So I just wanted to fill you in on that and help you understand what's coming all the way through the end of the year. So let's get going here. Today, I want to talk about what it costs when you're forbidden from seeing, reading, or knowing anything outside of the authorized script. I always trusted my church leaders. I trusted their vision, their books, their doctrine, until information control shifted because I dared to pull the curtain back and look at something that wasn't authorized, and it broke everything apart for me. Not something I'm unhappy with, but when I was wrestling deeply with the hypocrisy that I was personally experiencing inside the church, where my relationship with God was oftentimes in direct conflict with what I was being told under the ruse of supporting local leaders, but that actually really felt like control and the removal of my personal freedom. Someone I met online suggested that I watch The God Makers too. I was curious to do it because I already had some doubts, but I sat down to watch this film. I remember I was sitting in my laundry room with my computer, and I knew the film was quote unquote anti-Mormon, and watching it was supposed to be dangerous, even evil, but I did it. And in that less than hour-long film, I actually saw video of Gordon B. Hinckley, someone I'd been taught to trust with my whole soul, doing things that general authorities had taught us never to do, being in places he should never have been. Video evidence, I saw it in the clips. It was hard proof of hypocrisy from church leaders, a prophet who's not supposed to ever be wrong. Things that a regular member would have been excommunicated for, but he was protected. This footage didn't come from when he was a prophet, but it didn't stop him from becoming the prophet. I remember sitting there absolutely shattered, sobbing, actually. The men that I trusted with my life not only betrayed their own word, they controlled the narrative so no one would ever know. And that, for me, was the point of no return. I remember sobbing and calling my friend back on the phone, and I remember him really reacting to me as if I was overreacting. But my life had been built around this and the belief that everything I had heard was true. And even more devastating, after I left the church, right? It took me a long time to get the anger and angst out of my bloodstream. But one of my favorite general authorities was Thomas Monson. I loved his books. I loved the Mormon doctrine. It was something that that was a sort of a encyclopedia type book that he had written that covered all of the Mormon doctrine, and I loved it. I devoured his words. I trusted every line that he spoke as divine. But only after leaving, when we are in our deconstruction, that's when we start seeing truths that would shatter us before we leave the church. But that's when I started to see that the leaders I had revered, that I'd worked for years to follow unconditionally, they controlled which truths we saw and which ones we never heard about. They used language of theology to control people and to make themselves rich. They say that Mormonism, the Mormon church, is among the richest churches, but it's not the people who are rich. The more I thought about it, the more I asked, did these men know what they were doing? Did Monson realize the power that he held over us? Did he know how much he was hurting people? Did he mean to use faith as a tool for money, for obedience, to reach his own status? Makes me sick. If he did, and I believe now that he did, how could anyone do such things to so many people, knowing the pain it causes, or maybe not caring about the pain it causes, just to keep themselves wealthy and in power? That is, in my bones, what I consider to be evil. And it's not just about hidden information, right? I've told you this story before. When I tried to teach off manual in Relief Society, and that actually led to women's hearts opening. And I taught from lived experience and from the guidance of my own intuition. I was instantly released. Tears in the room, women finally touched. And the only feedback was, you will not do that again. I remember looking at the face of the Relief Society president, who at the time was my friend. And she just looked cold, shut down. Think about that. I was silenced and punished for spiritual truth, while my leaders who consumed forbidden information, who violated their own standards, kept control unchecked. Religious information control is abuse. If you're forbidden to consume outside sources, books, films, news, even the internet, that's abuse. Doctrine passed down says, don't read anti-Mormon literature or your very soul is in danger. Meanwhile, the leaders and authority figures have complete unrestricted access. They see, they analyze, they use information, including information about you, to protect themselves. You're left faithful but blind, obedient but manipulated. You're even punished for seeking truth. Information control isn't just about hiding awkward facts. It rewrites your reality. It breeds self-doubt. It discourages you from going, something's not right here. I think that's why it took me so long to leave the church. I had so many moments of, something doesn't feel right. My conclusion was it must be me. You develop paranoia. Maybe I'm bad for wanting to know. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. That's profound spiritual betrayal by church leaders. You perform, you silence your curiosity, you stop trusting your own mind. If any of this is resonating with you, if this sounds familiar, first of all, if there's anyone that you know that needs to hear this, please share my podcast so that more people can identify what causes the harm in order to heal it. But if you want to know, okay, what do I do now? Because it feels so overwhelming and so shattering to realize that your whole worldview has been controlled by men with less than godly motivation. What can you do? Name the sources you were warned never to see. Consider, what was the truth that was dangerous, or was it a threat to their control? Yes, me watching the God makers threatened their control. But the control already had big cracks in it before I sat there. It was just the tipping point for me. I was grateful for my friend who offered me support. And definitely, when you start to explore outside of what's allowed, make sure that you can do it safely with support so you can find out what you weren't allowed to know. This is what I want you to know. This is what I want to say right now. The divine is not threatened by your curiosity. Abusive systems are. Start tracking your reactions. What topics still trigger fear for you when you think about what you were taught? Or what topics, when you think about them, make you feel guilt? Those are signals of old programming, not sacred boundaries as you were told. Reclaim your right to read, to listen, to learn, to research without apology, without shame, or without permission. God is not honored by your ignorance. God is honored when you seek, question, and hunger for real truth, even if it shakes what you've been taught. A path requiring information control is not the path of a loving God. It's the path of men seeking power. You have the freedom to choose your resources, your research, your questions, your reading. No leader, no church, no doctrine has the right to police your mind or block your pursuit of the truth. And if you've experienced the heartbreak of learning your leaders weren't who you thought, no, you're not alone. Your pain is real, and your hunger for truth is holy. Allow yourself to follow it, and the breakthroughs that you have become the most life-affirming, freedom-producing experience you could imagine. I'd like to invite you. My forbidden source was God makers too. What was your forbidden source? What did you start to explore that helped you answer questions that you've been forbidden to ask. I also want to encourage you, if you're ready to think about spirituality beyond just what you were taught and something at an experiential level that is so much more soul satisfying because it's personalized to you, take the Sacred Intimacy Snapshot at innerlightcompanion.com. You could also download my free meditation for processing spiritual betrayal, difficult emotions at innerlightcompanion.com. And then subscribe for the next episode. So many people leave church that is controlling, feeling fearful of making their own decisions, and get stuck in, what do we call it, analysis paralysis. So I want to invite you to tune back in next Tuesday, where we'll talk about freedom in daily decisions. Until then, question everything. Know that God gave you a mind that is intended to question, to seek, to be curious, and to be dissatisfied with answers that feel like they constrict you and shut you down as a human being in order to belong. Thanks for listening. As you step into your day, notice which intimacy stirred for you, and then choose one small practice and let it meet you where you are. You want support? Grab the free Sacred Intimacy Snapshot, and when you're ready, the full Sacred Intimacy Assessment that can guide your next steps. Links are in the show notes. Until next time, walk gently, listen deeply, and trust the light within.